Nobody's going to give me a job. I had to adapt or get left behind. I wanted to stand out from everybody else. People see the success. Nobody sees all of the things that you had to do.
This is Teacher Talk.
Oh, that's a nice title, isn't it?
After what you described yourself as one of the worst periods,
Yeah.
where did you go? What did you do? What was the plan?
So obviously this was during COVID. COVID had just started. I found myself back in the north of the UK, staying with a few friends, and I was just waiting for the green light, from government and stuff to say you could travel. I was waiting for that, and as soon as I got an opportunity, I was off.
And when you got that opportunity, where did you decide to go?
It was Portugal. So yeah, I actually decided the summer before, because I'd explored a few other options. I'd considered going back to Vietnam, but I just felt it was too far at that period of my life. It was too far to go back and forth. Italy, obviously, because of what had happened, I didn't feel like I wanted to go back. Never really fancied Spain, and I saw Portugal. I knew nothing about it, so it just felt like another adventure.
No way. And tell us a little about what you did for your accommodation-wise.
So I did research. I was much better now at this point, but I only booked a place for like the first 2 weeks that I was there. I describe it like a whole hostel/hotel. Everyone has their own individual rooms, but there was a nice common area where people would mingle, and that was a great place to meet people. As I say, it was COVID. It was difficult to meet people around that sort of time, so that was perfect. That was a perfect place to kind of start this new journey, this new episode.
And as you mentioned, obviously you was in a hostel. Where did you go from there? So
the reason I always just book somewhere temporarily is because you can only really figure it out once you get there. So where I was staying, some of the other people, I'd made friends with, they're still friends to this day. I still keep in touch with them. I still see them. They told me about other websites that they use. So I, again, did some more research, found some websites looking for permanent accommodation, and I came across this apartment. As soon as I saw it, I wanted it. It was very similar to the feeling I had when I went to Lima in Peru. It's like, I want that apartment. It was in a district of Lisbon called Alfama. It's like the old part of Lisbon. Super cool, like windy roads, narrow streets, narrow windy streets. And the apartment from every window had a view of the river. So in Lisbon, that joins the sea, it's called the River Tejo. And yeah, I thought, to have that as your view every single day, I want that. And I got that. So that was really happy. That was incredible to live in that apartment.
And how did the view actually compare to Peru?
That's a good question. Lima, Pacific Ocean for 6 months. That was pretty special, but there was something about that view. I would have to say Lisbon, because it looked on to the other side of the river, the other side of Lisbon. You had all of these sort of terracotta roofs of Lisbon. The light in the evening was just incredible. You got the sunrise as well. So yeah, I would have to say that view was better. It was special, it really was.
So we talked about your accommodation. Obviously, what did you do for work? Had you already applied for positions, or what was you doing?
Yep, a lot more savvy, after doing this for so long. I'd done what I always do. I knew I was going to Lisbon. Simple thing, go out to Google, English schools, language schools in Lisbon. I got a list of email addresses, sent my CV, cover letter, all of that. Even though this was during the summer, I got some responses, but nobody's going to give me a job whilst I'm still in the UK. They're only going to give me a job or an interview once I arrive. Mm-hmm. So it's still a risk, to think, well, I didn't go there with anything actually set up. But again, at this stage of my career, my CV is pretty impressive. So I wasn't worried. It's like, for me, it wasn't a risk. And I actually, I booked the accommodation of my flight around the interviews. So I kind of got everything to connect. So the first week that I was in Lisbon, I had two interviews set up.
And how did they go? Did you fully divulge your business plan? Very arrogant, or what did that go like?
No, I didn't. Not this time. I learned from my mistake. But one of the interviews, so I researched both schools, find out what courses they provided, because I thought if they specialise in Cambridge exams, then that's what I need to focus on in the interview, or if it's young learners or adults or whatever. And I was looking at the Google reviews for one of the schools, and I came across one of the comments, and it must have been from like an ex-teacher or something, because the comment was scathing. It was like, oh, the school's terrible, the owner's terrible, the school doesn't pay its teachers. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, and I'm definitely going to bring that up in the interview. So I did.
And how did that go?
Well, I wasn't arrogant about it. I wasn't trying to be rude. But, when it came to, okay, Kane, have you got any questions for us? Question number one, what's the hourly salary? How much do I get paid? People are always, I don't know why people are funny about asking that question in an interview. Like, it's an important question. You need to know, right? How much you're getting paid? So that's question number one. And then I thought, all right, handle this diplomatically, be polite, I don't know if this is true or whatever. And I just brought it up. I said, listen, I've seen a review on Google from this person about, the school not paying teachers. And I can't quite remember the specific answer that he gave me, but I wasn't overly confident with his answer, because again, he was more saying that it was the teachers the problem, and the school pays, which probably they do. It could have been an isolated case, but it was a red flag, and I interviewed for the other school, and to be honest, I preferred it anyway. They were offering me more hours, so the timetable was better. So in the end, I chose the other school.
And when you say they was offering you more hours, was it enough sustainable financially for yourself, or?
Yeah, no, it was. And my timetable, my schedule quickly built up, because the way the school operates, it's not like they start in September and finish in June or whatever. They get courses all throughout the year, short-term courses. So yeah, very quickly, I built up a good timetable and to support a life out there.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was at this time you was not only teaching in person in a classroom, but you actually started to teach online.
Yeah, first experience with that. Yeah.
And how did that go?
But pre-COVID, I'd never considered online teaching. I've met a lot of people that have done it. A lot of people who, it supports the kind of traveling backpack lifestyle. You've got a laptop, a Wi-Fi connection. The money was pretty good at that point. People were offering a lot of money, actually, especially from the East. But I'd never fancied it. I'd never considered it. I love the classroom too much. But it's COVID, not just this industry, but a lot of other industries changed. The world changed around that time, and I had to adapt or get left behind. So I just saw it as a new challenge.
Obviously, as you say, you've got to adapt. What barriers or problems did you come across?
Honestly, in the beginning, there were no issues, because if you remember, I actually contacted you at that time, and another friend, and I just got in touch. And I think this is really important for other teachers who are worried or nervous about teaching online if they're not sure about the platforms. I use Zoom, but I'd never used it before, so I got in touch with you, another friend, and just said, hey, listen, I've got some online lessons. Would you mind jumping on a call just so I can try it out? And I think it's a simple thing, but teachers don't do that. And I think that's what they should do. If you're starting out, if you're doing your first online lesson, call a few friends, ask them to jump on a call, because that's obviously what we did. And you just try it out. You get immediate feedback. I was trying all of the functions, sharing the screen, sharing the audio, using the whiteboard, and I was getting immediate feedback, like, oh, what can you see? What can you see now? Can you see this tab? Can you hear the audio? So because I'd already done that, the first lesson, I was much more confident and very comfortable. I just didn't want to try on the job. I felt I should put a bit of work in beforehand. So no, initially it was fine. I think the only issue that I had, I think it was one of my first lessons. I had a group of 6 people, and when you were on the call, I was trying the breakout rooms, because that's the problem with Zoom or Teams. When you're in a meeting, only one person can talk, right? That's what breakout rooms is for. So in the lesson, so okay, well, I know how to do it. I couldn't open the breakout rooms, and I couldn't figure it out why. So I emailed the school after the lesson, and it was the settings. They disabled breakout rooms. So it wasn't my issue. It was their account. It was for them to disable it. But what was interesting is one of the students from that lesson quit immediately. So the school saw this as some sort of an issue. Like, oh, Kane's not sure about Zoom. So they had set up a meeting for me with their head teacher. And I remember having the meeting. Is like, oh, so Kane, I hear you're struggling with Zoom. And again, I was like, no, I'm fine. It was the school. I explained the situation for the 12th time. The school had disabled the function. They now enabled the function. I'm fine. So anyway, he started to give me his sort of Zoom tips. And it was really interesting because he said, well, to be honest anyways, I don't use breakout rooms. I don't really share my screen. I don't use the whiteboard. I don't share audio. He said, I just communicate with them through the chat. And I was like, wow. So the school was thinking I have an issue with it. And I was worried, like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing for my students? Are they getting the most out of it? And then there's this guy doesn't use any of the basic functions. So yeah, that was a bit wild.
Yeah, it's very concerning, especially as being the headmaster. It's very concerning.
It is, and it's just like the students, they're not getting the most out of the experience. I'm not tech savvy, but these are really basic things. Sharing screen, sharing audio. You have to learn them. It's that thing of adapting. Otherwise, the students don't get the most out of it.
No, yeah, and at the end of the day, that's what you're there for.
Exactly.
So obviously during this time, you arrived when COVID was still ongoing. There was a lot of lockdowns. How did how was it like settling in Lisbon?
It was tough in the sense that, and I had this conversation today actually with a group of students who live in Lisbon. The time that I was there, I didn't really get to experience Lisbon for all that it is because of lockdown, because of restrictions. A lot of things were closed, or you had to have like a test every time you went into a restaurant. So even though I had some friends and a bit of a social life, I didn't get to experience Lisbon for all that it offers, and that's a shame.
So it must have been hard to keep motivated and focused. How did you do that at that time?
To be honest, it was the opposite. I felt more motivated and focused than ever before. As I said, after that rough period, I went to Lisbon with this new kind of outlook. I felt brand new. I felt very fresh. I felt very ready. And because I was now working online, I still had lessons in person and some online. It was like a hybrid system, let's say. And it's great, when you're working online, you don't have to commute. You don't have that time wasted going to and from lessons or work. So I had more time sort of on my hands. And the apartment that I lived in had an attic. And that's where I did my online lessons. Nice little room, desk, chair. There was a window in front of me again with a view of the River Tejo. It was a great place. So I felt really motivated and really focused.
So it was around this time you started to actually get a few private students.
Yeah.
And as previously before, it come to you that you wanted to actually start a business. How did that come about?
Yeah, the dream had never left. After what happened in Italy, I took the dream with me. But now, as you say, I'm getting private students. That kind of dream is back on. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, I need a name. What's the name of the school going to be? What's the logo going to look like? So I just set about in the attic. I would just spend some days, literally hours, just sitting and thinking about it. I had a whiteboard, which has become really useful over the next couple of years. I love, I have ideas and I love getting those ideas out. So I would write things down on a whiteboard, trying to get think of a name of a school, like writing different combinations of words, trying to find something that would fit, that would suit, that I was happy with. And I was like, I don't want to be called like an English school. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself that early on. So I wanted to be a language school, really. So again, just playing on the word language and what I wanted to represent, and basically the name Language for Life came out, which is not a unique name, but combine that with the logo, the colours and everything, it is, in terms of other schools, their logos, they're all very similar. They'll have like red, blue, white, those kind of colours. Our logo is very different, and I wanted that. I wanted to stand out from everybody else. So yeah, all of these things now started to happen, and that's where Language for Life, at least the name, that's where it was born.
And obviously we all know that you're not very tech savvy. So how did you come about actually creating the actual logo, the visuals for it?
Yeah, that was frustrating. You're right, I'm not tech savvy, but I did try, because I knew what I wanted to look like. And that was the frustrating thing. I could see it in my head, but I couldn't create it. I've not got the skills to create it. And I would ask people, for some help or whatever, or, try this website, try this sort of thing. You can create logos. I tried, I really did. I tried. It just, a child could do better, basically. But I had a rough idea of what I wanted. I just need somebody else to really create it and sort of make it what it is now.
Previously opened up a school. How different was it now opening this one?
Very different. The big thing was I was doing this alone. Obviously in Italy, me and my partner, we were doing it together. We had each individual strengths and weaknesses, and we focused on those sort of strengths. Whereas this time I was having to do everything. I was being responsible for everything, and that was tough. Also, I'd been there for a couple of months. I still didn't know a lot of people. I was still learning about the culture, and that was the tough thing. But I looked at it like, having the school, or opening or starting the school, that was step Z. And I didn't want to worry and panic and, oh my God, how am I going to get from A to Z? Because the only way to get there is first B. You've got to go first A to B, and then to C, and then to D. So even though Z was the school, I just looked at, all right, focus on step B. What is step B? And that's all I've done. For the last couple of years, it's still just step by step. What's next? What can we actually do next? Rather than worrying about how are we going to get there, it was just step by step.
And at what point did you decide that Portugal was going to be home for the foreseeable?
Actually before I went, just because, again, the dream was back on, and it was going to be in Portugal. I was going to start a school, start a business in Portugal, and I couldn't have that in my mind and then be thinking about moving to another country. Like, when we were talking about Italy, Peru was always in the back of my mind. But now, I'd built a career, I was trying to build a business, and that was it. That was the only focus. I wasn't really thinking about the next destination. Mm-hmm. It was just, let's build the business. And so I just kind of committed myself to, not necessarily Lisbon, but Portugal. It's like, okay, if you want to build a business, you can't keep moving around. So, I decided before I'd even arrived that I was going to be there. And
was there any different feelings or emotions? Because obviously every other time you'd gone away, it was for a set period of time. And knowing that this was, again, somewhere you was going to be living for the foreseeable, how did you feel about that?
I felt great. I'm very happy and comfortable with the decision. Episode 1 that we recorded, it was, before I started teaching, the focus was traveling. Then it was teaching. And now it's flipped on its head. Teaching is it. Like, I love this job. I love this career. I love building the business. Traveling is now next. That's the second most important thing, or not even that. Everything is about teaching and the business.
So would you describe this as a rebuilding year for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. I went to Lisbon. Like I said before, I felt great. I really, really did. I felt like my life was back on track again. I had a clear vision, a clear path, and that word, it was a complete rebuild. It was a reset. And Lisbon, certainly like that the first couple of years in Portugal, but that first year in Lisbon was really, really laying down the foundations to what we have now.
Yeah. And looking back now, was you actually building something at that stage, or was you just figuring it out, would you say?
Definitely building. Again, after everything that had happened, I was definitely building. And I think that's also where the logo kind of came from. You know, the logo is the tree, and what people don't see underneath the tree is the roots. And it's the same with even in business. People see the success. Nobody sees how you became successful, all of the things that you had to do. And as I said, because Lisbon, I was laying down the foundations, I was also laying down the roots that obviously have now become Language for Life.
This is where things start to come together. Online lessons, new ideas, and the first real steps forward for Language for Life. The next episode, 28th of June. Subscribe and make sure you're there.